the name Neapolis wasn't unique to this place. It appeared in several parts of the ancient world, simply meaning new city. And of course, necropolis means city of the dead. Now, this picture is from 1944. Here we can clearly see the so-called lava plug on the top of Vesuvius. This top, or lava prop as they called it, shows something important. At that time, Vesuvius did not have a crater, so the volcano was almost sealed shut. No open summit, even though the official story tells us it had erupted earlier. Experts explain this by saying the inside was packed with layers of solidified lava from those earlier eruptions. Then, according to the narrative, the 1944 eruption finally broke through, emptied the inside, and left it hollow. And that's why they say we have the deep crater we see today, because the lava chamber beneath the volcano was emptied out. I'm still not sure what I really think a volcano is. Part of me feels it could even be the remains of an ancient structure, something we no longer recognize. Some years ago, I heard Shepu talk about Lemery's volcano experiment. And that experiment makes so much sense to me. Lemery discovered that heat is produced when iron filings and sulfur are mixed with water. And if you bury that mixture just a few meters underground, it can even mimic a volcanic eruption. And all of these elements can actually be found in old buildings. So imagine an ancient world buried under our feet, just like the many cities we keep discovering today. Could this be part of the reason for some of the eruptions we call volcanic? And now, finally, my holiday photos, which are very overdue since my trip was back in the spring of 2025. Here we are at the top of Vesuvius, and all along the path there were small souvenir shops. On the roof of one of them, you can see a solar panel, probably just powering the shop itself. A little further up, there are more panels connected to different pieces of equipment. So what equipment does this solar panel actually power? This photo shows 4 separate spots where thin white plumes rise from the crater rim. If you look it up online, most explanations say it's steam coming from a fumarole, but most sources also say that Vesuvius no longer has active fumaroles. They only add that the ground is still warm deep below, so maybe some steam could find its way up. But that feels strange, because I found a video from years ago showing the exact same mist in the exact same spots. But still, if steam was truly coming from Vesuvius, wouldn't we see it inside the crater, not from small rocks along the top? And that's the last thing that stands out. These little smoke puffs appear almost evenly spaced. If vapor rises from multiple points in a neat pattern, it's almost certainly not natural geothermal gas. And here, I couldn't help thinking that the very top of Vesuvius actually reminded me a bit of the mountain tops in Svalbard. The building we see out in the water is Castel dell'Ovo, the Egg Castle. It's the oldest fortress in Naples, and honestly, it was my main reason for coming here. The mainstream story says it's built on volcanic rock, from volcanic rock, and in some parts even into the rock itself. The whole structure sits on what used to be an ancient island. Its melted look, they say, comes from centuries of salt, wind, and erosion. slowly blending the boundary between architecture and nature. And according to an old legend, a magical egg was hidden in its foundations. If that egg ever breaks, disaster will strike Naples. That's why it's called the Egg Castle. Unfortunately, the site was under restoration, so I couldn't go inside. But I did manage to get photos of the outer wall on the city side. I'm not really sure what to say about these walls, but they immediately reminded me of a random wall I saw while walking in Naples. I had booked a full-day trip to the Amalfi Coast, and one of the first stops was in Positano at a limoncello factory. But honestly, I spent most of that time out on the parking lot, taking photos of this incredible wall instead. The bus dropped us off at the top, and from there we could enjoy the walk down. This is really mind-blowing. It's hard to tell what is supposed to be natural stone and what might actually be man-made. And the trip from Positano to Amalfi continued by boat. I had a few hours in Amalfi, so I headed straight up the hillside to get as close to these structures as possible. And look how it almost seems to flow downward. All along the Amalfi Coast, you see these arches, sealed with stone. Some say they were simply filled in to support the structure. Here you can see several arches filled in with stone. I really wanted to get all the way out to the point on the right, but it wasn't possible to go that far. So this was as close as I could get. And here's one last photo of the town, just before the trip back to Naples. Castelnuovo means the new castle, but it was actually built in 1282 on top of something much older. And just look at how it was built. Absolutely beautiful. I think walls like this are incredibly hard to restore, so most of what you see here is probably the real old stonework. And as you can see from this old painting from 1472, it looked the same back then. Everything just seems so perfect. While building a metro station in the early 2000s, construction crews accidentally uncovered an entire Roman harbour district, buried under centuries of soil, ash, and city life. And you can see the castle just above this area. It was built from volcanic stone, wood, brick, and Roman concrete. And no one knew it was down there. And from here, the ruins continue underground, leading all the way toward the metro station. This huge round structure inside the metro station is actually the base of one of the 5 towers of Castelnuovo, the same castle we just saw above ground. It once stood fully above the surface, but over the centuries the city level rose and gradually buried it. Castel Sant'Elmo is a massive star-shaped fortress on Vomero Hill, overlooking Naples and the entire bay. It was built mainly between 1537 and 1547. The walls are said to be built directly into the natural rock. just like we saw at dell'Ovo, and like the structures from my trip to Königstein. It's considered one of the earliest star forts of the early modern period. In 1587, lightning struck the fortress, igniting the gunpowder storage and destroying several inner buildings. Because, of course, a fire with rather unusual circumstances had to happen here as well. And this line in the wall reminded me of something I once saw in a photo from Greenland. This line in the rock is not man-made. According to mainstream geology, it's a volcanic dike. Magma that, millions of years ago, pushed up through a crack in the sandstone and solidified. Makes perfectly nonsense. This photo is from San Lorenzo Maggiore, right above the ancient Macellum of Naples. You pass through this beautiful medieval hall. The frescoes on the walls show a family tree of the Angevin kings and queens of Naples, all linked through round portraits. The figures wearing the red hats are cardinals. Right in the heart of Naples, hidden beneath a 13th century church, lies a Roman marketplace from the 1st century AD. And down these stairs we find the Macellum. From the mainstream view, stone-paved streets, shops carved into volcanic tuff, and a central square with columns, all still intact. For centuries it was buried under ash, rubble, and later buildings. And you can still see the red bricks. And here's a staircase that leads absolutely nowhere. And just look at the detailed craftsmanship. And here you can still see some of the coding on the wall. People suspected something was down there as early as the 1700s, but the full extent wasn't revealed until the 1970s and 80s. Only then did archaeologists understand that an entire Roman market district had survived, perfectly preserved beneath their feet